Hey BookTube friends, it's been a while, so let's talk about some recent reads. The first book I want to talk about I feel like is pretty timely right now considering we are dealing with some cases of monkeypox, and that is The Demon in the Freezer by Richard Preston. This book deals specifically with smallpox, and it starts out with the smallpox eradication program in the 1970s, and then we also follow other scientists with the CDC and the US military who are doing some experimentation. It's pretty graphic in its description, so just a warning there are very detailed, vivid descriptions of autopsies and necropsies and animal testing, because at one part in the book you do see that researchers are having to do experiments on monkeys because it is, of course, unethical to give someone smallpox, and since smallpox in nature has been eradicated, that was really the only way that they could perform the testing. So that was a bit heartbreaking to read, particularly when it's revealed that even the monkeys who survive after having contracted smallpox, I think there was one in the group who survived, they still have to be euthanized because their bodies then have to be studied for the effects of smallpox. So very hard to read because that particular monkey liked to eat cotton candy and marshmallows, and some of the researchers became quite close with that animal in particular. So kind of tough to read, but I think this is a cautionary tale because the author points out it's uncertain really how many countries have access to the smallpox virus right now, and we don't really know what other countries, or possibly even our own, is doing with that virus. So the potential for biological warfare is definitely there, and a lot of the stories in this book are occurring with the backdrop of the anthrax attacks. Of course, in the weeks after 9/11, there were a series of anthrax attacks. Anthrax was sent to a couple of media outlets and then some senators' offices, and I believe 5 people total were killed in that attack, and then others contracted anthrax as well. And that attack was actually perpetrated by a scientist who was working on an anthrax vaccine, and that program was about to be shut down. And so this series of attacks was meant to prompt the government, I guess, to invest in that research program again. So that's pretty scary, although I do have a ton of respect for the scientists and the researchers that put themselves in harm's way, and just hearing about what they have to go through in their personal lives, and physically and psychologically in order to do these things, it's pretty crazy. Even with all the science in this book, it was riveting to read. I mean, this was my beach read. I recently went on a beach trip. I know that might sound weird to some people, but this was my relaxing beach read, and I can't really say that it didn't prompt a bit of anxiety in me, but you know, I do balance it out because the next book that I finished recently was Wayne Dyer's Your Erroneous Zones, Step-by-Step Advice for Escaping the Trap of Negative Thinking and Taking Control of Your Life. Now, this book was written in the 1970s originally, and so it is a classic self-help book, and even though I'm someone who does read a good bit in that genre, I'd never read it. I feel like this book really sums up a lot of the advice that other self-help books try to cover as well. Essentially, it's about taking control of your life and your happiness and really looking internally instead of externally for those sorts of things. And in this book, he covers a lot of the problematic behaviors that are the result of looking externally for validation. So things like boasting and jealousy and just general unhappiness. It points out a lot of things that I think people could recognize in themselves and also in those around them. One of the things that I really liked reading about was the cycle of labeling yourself, and essentially the story that you tell yourself, because this is something that I see a lot in education. So let's say we have someone who says, I'm not good at math. Well, if you keep telling yourself that and you believe that, then you won't practice math. You won't do your homework. You won't invest any time or energy in getting better at math because you've already resigned yourself to the fact that you're not good at it. And Dyer really just points out that that's an excuse. And it's easier to make excuses than it is to change and grow. So that's why a lot of us do that. And we fall into these neurotic traps of saying, like, well, that's just how I am and that's how I've always been. Well, you don't always have to be that way, and people aren't static, or they shouldn't be. So the reality is that you choose to be a certain way, and at the end of the day, we are really the sum total of the choices that we make. Something else that was covered in this book that I feel like is very valuable to today is not letting others dictate your taste, because I feel like with the rise in all of these social media platforms, it's very easy to be influenced by influencers, and sometimes there's so much noise, it's kind of hard to differentiate what your tastes actually are. So I do feel like that's a great reminder to all of us to just kind of tune into ourselves and what our tastes are. And you don't always have to seek validation for everything. You don't always have to ask, do you like this outfit on me? What does this outfit look like? You know, it should be more about you, and you are in control of your life. You can create whatever life you want to have. So I feel like that's always a valuable message. The third book I want to talk about is A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti, and this is a young adult book. It stuck out to me because the main character is a cross-country runner, and of course I love running, and I am an assistant cross-country coach, so I thought I would give it a go. And I did not expect for this book to be quite so moving. Our main character, Annabelle, she has suffered something very traumatic, and we don't really know what has happened until the end of the book, but there are little hints that are revealed throughout. But we really see her personal struggle to come to grips with what's happened to her. And at the beginning of the book, she is at a diner and she just takes off running. And she calls her mother and she tells her mother that she's going to run from her home in the West Coast all the way to Washington, D.C. So we have a bit of a Forrest Gump moment here, but we actually get to see inside her head and travel with her and her lovely grandfather. I love the grandfather character in this because he is her main supporter throughout this cross-country trek. And there are a lot of references to things that are specific to runners, so if you're a runner, you know. Even if you're not a runner, I feel like you will take a lot from this book because there are important, timely topics that are covered in this book. The story is just very heartening. It's just a testament to the human spirit and what people can overcome. So I really enjoyed this book as well. I hope you guys are reading something good. Please let me know in the comments if you've read anything good recently or if you've read any of these books. If you'd still like to join the Black Hearts Book Club this month, we are in the middle of reading The Red House Mystery, and we're discussing it on an Instagram chat. So I hope that you'll consider joining, if not this month, then maybe next month. But wherever you are, I hope you're having a tremendous day, and I'll see you in the next video.